Yo, what's up, y'all? Been a minute, to be honest. It's been almost a year and a half since I uploaded my first video on this channel. If y'all are still from the old video, welcome back. Crooked's back. I'm gonna discuss it in another video, but it's been this long because I graduated from college. I've been working all this stuff, a lot of stuff that just kept me from making YouTube videos. But hey, better late than never, and here we are with what I think is a good continuation from the last one, a good start to this channel, which is going to be a hi-hat layering tutorial. And I'm going to show you with this beat here, but just a intro of this, the kind of videos I'm going to be having on this channel. I'm going to be having some new, I'd say, unique content on how to better your drums, eventually down the line melodies too, but just kind of good content that shows you real techniques, real advice on how to improve your drums, improve your rhythm, your bounce. And I think this will come into play a lot better than, I'm not going to say any other tutorials, but then some information you might find out there that's too simple, quick tricks, and I talked about that in my last video. But yeah, we're going to go jump straight into it on how to layer hi-hats. So just to start, basically, hi-hats are such a key component of a lot of beats. Obviously, you can have them without, have a beat without hi-hats, but generally with a lot of trap beats, a lot of kind of style that I've been making, especially like Memphis or Atlanta style beats, hi-hats make up a big part of the bounce. So a great technique that has worked for me for so long and just kind of spices up your hi-hat game is layering hi-hats. So let's go ahead with it. I have this beat right here. Let me go ahead and show you all that first. So there you have it. That's just a quick little preview. It's an old beat, but this is just a great example of how you can layer your hi-hats, just creating crazy bounce. And I'll show you just layer by layer. And I'm going to be going over 3 main techniques in this video. This is part of a series. This isn't going to be the only layering hi-hat series or the only hi-hat tutorial I make. So this is going to be the first of a series, but this series is going to cover some 3 main fundamentals that I think comes to, if you've never layered hi-hats before, you've done it hasn't worked out for you, I think this video will be great for you. So let's get started. Alright, so let's get started with this layering hat tutorial. So the first and foremost thing that I think is important when it comes to layering hats, and I think this is important when it comes to beats in general, it's sound selection. So when you have a main hi-hat pattern, and in this case, for this beat, it is this pattern. So you have that main pattern right there, which is a bright, sort of typical, sharp sounding hi-hat, and that's going to be your main rhythm. So in order to layer hats, and the purpose of layering hi-hats and why I'm making this tutorial, is that you have this main sound, and being able to add hi-hats allows you to add to the rhythm and the bounce of the main pattern and the beat. And not only that, allows you to play off of that main pattern and add these hi-hat sounds to it that are cohesive. And what I mean by that is that the sound selection of these different hi-hats, however many you use, should play off on each other so they sound compatible, that when they play together, it's like one piece. It's not that you can just outright hear 3 different hi-hat patterns, you're playing all over the place. That's not going to work, and that actually is a problem for you to just kind of randomly go and pick random hi-hats and hope they work together. No, you want to have an ear for sound selection. So that bright sharp hi-hat that I just played, one idea of how to get a good sound selection is frequencies. So what I mean by that is that's a bright high frequency hi-hat. To get a sound that might be more compatible with it, you might want to look somewhere in a different frequency range for like a mid-range heavy hat or a lower frequency range heavy hat. One that doesn't clash with that frequency, but still can take up that space and sort of add to the rhythm. So for example, I had this hi-hat pattern that was in the lower frequency, and I thought it goes along well. So I'll show you that right now. And see, when you play these two together, you'll hear that like the higher hi-hats don't clash with the lower frequency ones. So if I used a high frequency hi-hat here, it would not sound good compared to using this one that's lower hat. So sound selection, one, frequency and sort of this brightness of the sound matters of the hi-hat. Another thing is the texture. So if it's a sharp hi-hat like that main pattern, you don't want to use a really sharp, tight hi-hat for something that complements it. Rather, like in that example of what I just showed you, I use a kind of fatter, thicker sounding lower frequency hi-hat. And that sort of texture, it's key, and it comes with practice, but you start to hear patterns of, okay, this hi-hat sound like typically doesn't work with this. So you want to make sure the frequency is kind of compatible, the texture is compatible, and just overall that when you're playing them together, it just doesn't sound like you're playing two different patterns that are just like fighting each other. You want them to work together. And then I added another layer to this beat, and I thought that it was a completely different sound, and that sometimes that might be a key to layering a hat well, is that if it doesn't clash and it sounds cool, you can always add another sound that also plays off the rhythm and adds some spice. So for example, this one, I'm just going to play them all together because you can kind of hear it, but it goes. Oh, wrong one. My bad. That's a wrong pattern. This is why I'm not organized enough. We got to get myself organized. But here's the actual pattern. Alright, so my next main technique or tip that I think is important in getting your hats layered right is to have good rhythms that go along with each other. And what I mean by that is that when you're making this beat, the melody, when you're making that, it has a melody or a rhythm that works with it, sorry. And when you're using that rhythm, you have infinite possibilities of adding bounce, character, kind of filling different pockets of the beat that you can work with. And that's the key here, is that you have this main rhythm, and when you're layering your hi-hats, you want your other layers to follow the pattern of this main rhythm and work with it, not just be some random notes that just kind of throw everything off, that just make the rhythm hard to predict. And that's something that the listener can also pick up on. So I think it's a key to have rhythms that go along with the melody, and you have a lot of possibilities here. So if we're looking at these different rhythms, let's look at these two together, the main one and this one, this low frequency one I played earlier. So when we're playing with the melody, you'll hear clearly. So you can hear easily from that alone that there's this bounce added by that second layer that doesn't conflict with that main bounce, the rolls and stuff that go with that first main layer. So the key here is to make sure that when you're making your patterns for your hi-hats, that you're listening to the melody, you're kind of figuring out that rhythm that goes along with it, that bounce, you're moving along to it. And when you're adding the second or third layer, whatever it is, that you sort of come up with a rhythm that follows that main pattern. And sometimes, you have different options here. You can either follow the bass line. You can make, like the hi-hat patterns here, kind of follow the bass line. You can make a pattern that follows the other hi-hat patterns. You can make a pattern that works more with the melody and the notes that it's playing. There's different parts of the beat that you can highlight and use as ways to layer your hi-hat rhythms and sort of highlight the bounce that you can create with the beat. So, and the crazy thing is if you get these rhythms right together and you have all these playing together, right? have all these playing together, then you can pick out each layer and sort of follow your own rhythm, but it still follows the general rhythm of the beat. I don't know how to, like, I hope that makes sense, but you have this opportunity to just spice up your beat and make it new for all your listeners in different ways, while still following this blueprint where it works with the bass line, works with the melody, works with everything to create this one piece. So get your rhythms right. There's a lot of ways of doing this, and I think the biggest key is, or a good tip would be to start with a two-step and just start with the basic two-step as your main pattern, and your second or layer of hats, just work off that and just try playing with a couple patterns that work with the melody you have. Because a two-step works with anything. So after that, your second layer needs to actually work with the melody and play off of it. So that's how you'll kind of get a feel for the compatible rhythms. But making sure those rhythms go together is key to having a good layered hat pattern. Alright guys, hope the first two tips helped. And to remind you, the first tip was that you got to have good sound selection when it comes to making different patterns and layering your hats. And two, you have to make sure you have good rhythms that go together. And in general, those are pretty important tips. And the third and final tip I think is just as important, but something you don't have to focus on right away, especially when you're starting to just put patterns together, but it's to get your mix right. And especially when it comes to like different samples you use and stuff, it's really easy for you to just, have one pattern, a hi-hat pattern, that just takes over the beat, or just doesn't let the other pattern show through, or it's it's too harsh and kind of messing with the other sounds of your beat. So it's important to mix your different layers to levels where they work together, they don't fight each other, just as we were talking about sound selection, but also that they sound reasonable enough where you can hear each level, but one pattern isn't too loud, one pattern isn't too soft, one pattern isn't kind of coming in and out, and like that way you can make sure that the sounds you choose, that they, at the end of the day, they sound good in terms of how the entire beat comes together with the final mix. So the importance of mixing, I think, is two big things, especially with hi-hats, is so the two most important things that I think comes into play, and there's more that I'll go into detail, but like the two main important things that you should focus on starting out with this are leveling, so which is really obvious. That's just how mixing is in general. It's about getting your levels right, making sure that one sound isn't overpowering another, that sounds kind of balance each other out, and that you have the right sounds leveled to the right amount. What I mean by that is your main hi-hat pattern, the one you want driving the rhythm beat, should be the louder leveled sound versus compared to the other two, or whatever amount of hi-hats you have. I keep saying two. But then after that, the layered hats you're putting through, you got to make a decision. It's like, do I want this pattern to be the next kind of rhythm that kind of shines through the beat, or do I want like these two patterns that I'm layering on top of this main pattern to kind of work with each other, have them leveled the same? These are decisions you need to make that actually make a difference in the final mix. Leveling is super important, and I feel like a lot of people who are like new to FL or just haven't really picked up on this, but like you can't just like leave the sounds default. And the funny thing is, this beat has the mix kind of default, but the reason for that is the sound selection I chose, and I honestly could level it better. But you'll see further in the layering tutorial, the next one, that I'll show you like what difference leveling makes. I could show you right now actually. Like, let's say I level this really low, and like this was the main pattern. You can hear how the background like kind of rolls or becoming louder, and that main one is getting softer, although it's a bright hi-hat, so it takes a lot of leveling down to get rid of it. But because those small changes matter, and they can really affect how the final outcome happens. So make sure you level your hi-hats right. And I think another big tip that can help you is effects like delay, or just reverb and stuff that can kind of add character to your layered hi-hats, your main pattern, so that way it sounds a little different. And it can also help with sound selection, even where you're mixing it differently so the sounds can work with each other better, or it just sounds better for the beat overall. But another big thing, and I think this is sauce for anyone who doesn't know about it, it's stereo spacing, especially in FL Studio. And that basically just means putting layered hi-hats, so the second or third pattern or whatever, and making it so they sit in the stereo space. So if you're wearing stereo headphones, they almost sound like they're around your main hi-hat pattern. So for example, I have this main pattern, right? And I'm going to put this on this track. And I'm going to say, oh, and to show stereo spacing, it's these blue knobs down here. All right, so I had to take a second to figure out what's going on. But it is wide too, that shows you the blue knobs at the bottom. This is called the stereo spacing knob. And I just didn't have my FL maximized, so it was just hidden by my start bar. But basically, you see these little knobs right here. What moving the stereo separation to the left does is separate the sound that's in that mixer track from 0 to 100%. So 100% means it's completely in the stereo space. It's not in mono, where mono will kind of be in the center of the sound. And if you're hearing the beat, you just hear that sound in like between your ears, right there in the center of your. Hard to explain, but you can also go to the right and make it completely mono, which means that a sound that might have some stereo character to it will just become mono. So by using this, you can actually make a sound more stereo space, so it leaves room for the other hi-hats that you layered to show out. You can kind of hear the difference. Let me show you with the main rhythm too. You hear how because now that main hi-hat just sounds less pronounced in the center of the beat, this is in the stereo space. So that I don't know if you guys heard a single thing I just said, but I basically just said that main hi-hat I just put on that stereo space track, it just went from being in the center of your face, like pronounced on the beat, to just being kind of in the surround sound and not being as pronounced, which now you can see can kind of help with adding layered sounds that aren't as pronounced, or it has like it's kind of clashing in the mono space, so you just stereo space it, now it's not clashing as bad. So by using these kind of mixing techniques, not just leveling stereo space, but other things such as effects and just different EQ and different stuff like that, filters, whatnot, you can change and shape the sound of your hi-hat layers so that either they just sound cooler together, they work better together, you're kind of making up for sound selection, or just spicing up your rhythms and balance. And I think overall, all three of these things, these three major tips, and there's going to be way more, are all really helpful things that can level up your hi-hat game. Especially if you haven't tried layering hats before, you should definitely try it. And just the main idea is that layering hats doesn't have to be hard. If you're just like trying to put together a beat and try layering hats and you think it's like, whoa, like, how do you guys do this? It sounds complex, and it's not. It's really, at the end of the day, it's just like anything else in a beat. Sound selection, leveling it right, finding good sounds, finding good rhythms, and then mixing it all together and making sure that it comes out well. So I think really the most important thing is just to try it, to try these techniques out, to just explore, try different sounds out, try different rhythms, just try messing around. And if it doesn't sound good, it's fine. You're learning, and that's the most important thing, is that every beat that you're trying something new, that you're trying to explore, that you're trying to just sauce it up, you're learning, and you're going to add that to your toolbox. And before you know it, even if you're making stuff, a lot of beats that just don't sound right, you're going to land that banger, and it's going to be because of all the stuff you've learned, like the things in this video. So I hope these tips helped, and until the next video, I'm excited to kind of show you guys this layering hat series and hi-hats in general and drums in general. I got a lot more on the way. But if you appreciated this tutorial and the tips I gave, feel free to leave a like, subscribe. It would help me a lot, because I want to keep giving you guys content and bringing you guys the quality content you deserve. And overall, I just hope that these three main tips and kind of the ideas that I'm trying to share about just going out of the box and layering hi-hats, or just trying new techniques with the same fundamentals, mixing, rhythms, leveling, and sound selection, can take you a far way. And I think that this tutorial series and just these tutorials overall can be of great help to you. So I hope you guys got a lot from this. Make some hard beats, try some new patterns, feel free to send me links on YouTube or on my socials, and I'll try to check it out. But I'd love to hear what you guys think, and keep making fire beats, guys. Keep it up. Peace out.